can't because the criteria are too tight. And here we have two people who fall into that criteria saying we still can't get it. What's going on? Jackie, I'll come to your call in just a few moments. 5:27, let's get a business update. Ben Kumar is here from Seven Investment Management to explain to me, but also to you, why my recent trip to the supermarket felt like going around Fort Knox.
Well, yeah, because if you're in the chocolate or the coffee section, you probably saw that they were locked up in plastic boxes and had weird security. Sorry?
All the steaks locked up. Can't get that. It's got tags on it.
Well, I mean, I guess one way to think about inflation is you can see what has gone up most in price by what is most at risk of theft. So with chocolate, for example, the price of cocoa wholesale 2 years ago was about $3,000 a tonne, and it went up as much as $12,000 a tonne.
Wow.
So, increased in price 4 times. It's come back down since, but those effects are still being felt in the chocolate market. So chocolate, cocoa, and of course alcohol are the items most stolen by thieves, and therefore the ones that need most protection. You've got to be, I was reading a report on this earlier, it's got to be portable, and you sell it on to, essentially another kind of shop that has slightly less picky about its supply chain, I guess.
And as a result, these supermarkets are presumably having to spend quite a lot of money, although maybe people won't cry too hard for the supermarkets making huge profits, spending that money on security.
Yeah, well, it's not just supermarkets, though, right? It's convenience stores. There's a story of a lady who runs a shop somewhere in Wales, owns it herself, and she says she loses £300 a week just on chocolate. Because people just walk out. Just on chocolate, just from people walking in, putting it in their pockets and walking out. And I guess if you're a thief, one thing you can do, if you can't sell it, you can always eat it and you've saved money.
Ben Kumar from Seven Investment Management, thank you very much indeed for your time. 03456060973 is the number. Here's David in Hampshire. Tom, a GP here. Completely agree with my GP colleague earlier. The current criteria for allowing us to prescribe Mounjaro to those who are overweight is so restricted that at my practice, out of 14,000 patients who I see, there are only 5 eligible. Give us the freedom to prescribe to those who need it. Well, all of those who say that they need it can't get it prescribed at the moment, so something's going wrong. We'll get back into the details of that in just a moment. After the news...
A rude, arrogant and entitled man who could not distinguish between the public interest, which he said he served, and his own private interest.
Ministers agreed to release files relating to the appointment of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as a UK trade envoy. We'll have a full report after the 5:30 headlines now. Amelia Cox.
The government and MPs have backed a call by Lib Dems to release files linked to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's appointment as UK trade envoy. The former prince was arrested over claims he passed information to Jeffrey Epstein while in the role. He's previously denied wrongdoing. President Putin says Ukraine is sabotaging peace plans on the 4th anniversary of the conflict, though Sir Keir Starmer says Moscow is to blame. The EU, meanwhile, has confirmed a loan of €19 billion to Kyiv is being held up by Hungary. And Russell Brand is due to go on trial after pleading not guilty to 2 further sex offences, including a 3rd allegation of rape. The former comedian is due to go on trial over several allegations made by 6 women, all of which he denies. LBC weather, clear spells in central, southern and eastern England tonight. Cloudier elsewhere with outbreaks of rain for western Scotland and Northern Ireland, a low of 6 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
It's been hailed as the biggest change in education for a generation to make schools more inclusive. 60,000 new SEND places.
Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, Minister for Women and Equalities. And let's get straight to the calls. Sarah is in Basingstoke. Sarah, you're through to Bridget Phillipson.
I'm calling because I have a 3-year-old son who's non-verbal and autistic, and he has an EHCP. Can you guarantee no child's EHCP will be taken away?
We will make sure that children's needs are reviewed and that the right support is put in place. So all children will have an individual support plan, all children with special educational needs. That will mean more children than right now.
So, again, the guarantee, no child who is getting support will lose it. You can guarantee that?
I can, because they will get support under the new system, that will involve individual support plans.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
So, what's on your to-do list today? Why don't you check if you're eligible for pension credit? It tops up your pension income and also opens up help with heating bills, council tax and more. Search pension credit on gov.uk or call 0800 99 1234. There's nothing to lose, Check today. Pension credit. Credit where credit's due. Eligibility criteria apply.
We asked patients at Great Ormond Street Hospital what makes someone special.
They can make me laugh lots and lots and lots and lots. They have to like arts and crafts. Their favourite food is chocolate cake.
They might be a magician, so they can magically make me better.
They will be kind.
Does that sound like you? Be someone special and leave a gift in your will to Gosh Charity. Search Gosh Legacy for your Gifts in Wills guide.
Thank you.
And when teams feel supported, they can achieve
Sorry. Just heard even more of my team are off ill.
Have you tried Benenden Health? It's easy to set up. They've got a GP helpline you can book 24/7.
Where were we?
A coffee break, hopefully.
Press play on your people's health with a wide range of healthcare services for less than £16 per employee per month. Search Benenden for business. Fee review periodically. T's and C's apply. Qualifying periods apply for some services. UK only. Visit benenden.co.uk.
That quiet moment behind the wheel. The perfect space to get your thoughts in order. With the stylish HR-V Hybrid, you get the head-turning design you want with the space and flexibility you actually need. Because every journey matters. Explore the full Honda range online at honda.co.uk. Honda, the power of dreams.
Tom Swarbrick. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
5:34 the time. Here's Gabby on WhatsApp. Tom, I think if you listened carefully to those last two calls, neither of them actually met the strict criteria of 4 conditions. Both of them only had 3, which just proves the point about how ridiculous those criteria are. Gabby, I think you're right. I'm sorry, but... and I love Abigail. I think Abigail's great. If you're 41 stone, you don't need any other conditions. Mount Jaro is your friend. GPs should just be giving it to you. By the bucket load. 03456060973 is the number. Paul, I'll come to your call in just a few moments. First,
a rude, arrogant and entitled man.
Sir Keir Starmer has refused to publish all files relating to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's appointment as trade envoy. As you heard the Trade Minister, Sir Chris Bryant, laying him to in the Commons, saying that documents which could jeopardise the police investigation into the former Duke of York would not be released. Helen Hodnott, LBC's reporter, has been following developments in the Commons. Helen.
So, Tom, despite it being a pretty empty chamber today and the government mostly backing the motion, today's debate was still nearly 3 hours long. And even though it's been historically extremely rare for members of the royal family to even be discussed in the Commons, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor came under fierce criticism from MPs. And leading the charge was Trade Minister Chris Bryant, who said he's been speaking to other MPs about their experiences with the former prince.
They all betray the same pattern. A man on a constant self-aggrandizing and self-enriching hustle. A rude, arrogant and entitled man who could not distinguish between the public interest, which he said he served, and his own private interest.
So those character traits, while perhaps unappealing, aren't, of course, crimes. But what MPs want the release of these files to shine a light on is how and why someone so allegedly difficult was given the trade envoy role, trusted to represent the UK around the world. It was suggested that Peter Mandelson might have recommended the appointment. He was a key advisor to the then Prime Minister Tony Blair when Andrew got the job. Here's the leader of the Lib Dems, Ed Davey.
One friend of Epstein lobbying for a job for another friend of Epstein, a job that might help Epstein enrich himself. So we clearly need to get to the bottom of that appointment, and only the papers demanded by this motion will allow us to do that. We need them published as soon as possible without delay.
So all to be revealed, perhaps, with the release of the files. But Minister Sir Chris said that he does want to manage people's expectations about how quickly the papers can be released. He said that they are old and that there are loads of them, and that, of course, there is a live police investigation. So just to kind of temper those expectations. And just as a reminder, Tom, as mentioned with a sense of frustration multiple times today, it wasn't as if there weren't serious complaints about Andrew's conduct in the trade envoy role at the time that he was doing the job. The papers called him Air Mile Andy, and he was accused of racking up these huge bills on his trips abroad. Here is then Prince Andrew discussing those criticisms while still in the role.
In order to do what I do for the UK and for UK business, I have to travel. No, that's it. It's one of those unfortunate, as it were, tags that one has to put up with.
So it's a tough job, but someone's got to do it, was his message back then. But both Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Peter Mandelson, who are released under investigation and bail respectively, have previously denied any wrongdoing in their links with Jeffrey Epstein.
Just finally, Helen, how much frustration was in the House of Commons about a suggestion that maybe it's in the government's interests just to hold this information back a bit longer?
Well, as you heard, they are saying that they fully back, as the government, they fully back the release of these files, but there are these caveats about the police investigation.
We'd love to release this, we really would.
Yeah, they say they back it in full, but that maybe some of them will be held back, which, you know, you do need a full and fair police process to be carried out. And if any of those documents were to then jeopardise any sort of fair trial, that would obviously not be good. So it's a balancing act, as the government set out earlier.
Helen, thank you very much indeed. LBC reporter Helen Hodnott, who's been following those developments in the House of Commons. Let's go to Paul, who's in Warrington. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Tom. First-time caller.
Welcome to the show, sir. Your thoughts on the NHS and the prescription of Mounjaro?
OK, so November last year, I tipped over into type 2 diabetes.
Right.
I went to my GP, asked them to weigh me. They didn't even have a set of scales that would weigh me correctly.
Hey.
I bought some new scales, took a weight, and I was 35 stone.
Sorry, the GP surgery you went to didn't have scales that could weigh you?
Yeah, they wouldn't go up far enough, they just went round.
Right.
So I got a weight, 35 stone, went to my GP, asked for the weight loss drugs, and effectively I was told I was too healthy.
Because you need to have 4 conditions as well as
yes.
being morbidly obese.
Correct. So I couldn't afford Mounjaro. I've privately got a prescription for Wegovy. Since November, I've lost 56 pounds. I'm now able to go out walking, but the big thing this has done, Tom, I've struggled with my weight for years, and the big thing this has done is it turns all the food noise off.
Yes.
So that I want a bar of chocolate, I want something sweet, etc., etc. It effectively disappears. And what it allows you to do is to start retraining yourself to eat healthier, etc., etc.
Absolutely saving you.
Yes. But it is, but financially it's a big burden. I mean, at the moment,
so here we are.
It's all going on credit cards.
Well, see, this cannot be right. That a man in your position, and forgive me, Paul, but a man who stands on the scales at the GP and breaks them, is not able to get this on the NHS when it's available on the NHS. Who is this going to?
Very few people, by the sounds of it.
Well, quite. Paul, I really appreciate your call. Good luck. You're doing the right thing. I know it's financially can be very ruinous for people, as Paul, I'm afraid, is experiencing. Thank you so much for the call. Jackie is another first-time caller is it Lana in Cornwall? Jackie, hi.
Yeah, Lana in Cornwall, that's right. Unfortunately not sunny.
Oh, you're joking. I was going to say, but it's beautiful today.
Love your show, by the way, and I just sort of had to call in today because a year ago, in February last year, I was in such a terrible state. I have got fibromyalgia, which obviously puts me in a lot of pain, and I can't do a lot of exercise and loads of things. And I did put on quite a lot of weight. And I was so desperate, physically and mentally, to try and do something that I thought I'm going to go to the GP and see if I can get on to the Mounjaro. Which obviously the GP was very apologetic. She couldn't help me because I didn't meet the criteria. Even though I could hardly walk, I could hardly get out of bed some days. I really was at rock bottom.
And this is, you couldn't get out of bed because of your weight?
Fibromyalgia. And well, not just my weight, but because of the excess weight obviously was playing on my knees, my hips. Yes. Every part of my body was affected.
Basically, Jackie, it strikes me that there is an NHS telling you almost that you're going to wait to get iller before they do anything about it.
And keep prescribing me painkillers and keep saying to me, look, we can give you more painkillers, but we can't actually help you to lose weight, even though I know I could have done a lot of it myself, but I found it really hard because I couldn't really exercise because my body was in so much pain with the fibromyalgia.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not as if you can get down to the gym every day.
I had a word with my husband. He sort of agreed that I could go and see a pharmacist, which I did. He's absolutely brilliant. And I was lucky enough to be able to afford it. But only up to a certain point, I've never actually had any more than 5 micrograms of it. You know, I couldn't go any higher because I couldn't afford it.
It does get very expensive. And that's helped?
I stayed on the 5, started on the 2 for a month, went on to the 5, and I've now lost 6 stone.
Wow.
I'm half a stone away from my target weight.
Brilliant.
And yes, I still have fibromyalgia. I'm still in pain, but I don't take as many painkillers. I'm able to go swimming a couple of times a week. I'm able to walk. I do more exercise. I can't say I can jog and I can't walk miles, but I'm able to walk and do so much more than I could before.
And what's terrible is that the help is there, available on the NHS, but not finding its way to you, which I just don't understand at all, I'm afraid. Jackie, I really appreciate the call. Good on you. Enjoy the sunshine when it comes to Lanna in Cornwall, which I presume if it's not today, it's got to be tomorrow. Tomorrow's meant to be an absolute scorcher. It's shorts and T-shirts tomorrow. It's 16 degrees, folks. And the sun's out all day, according to my weather app, which is an absolute rarity. My word, we need it. Jackie, thank you for the call. Zara, I'll come to your call in a few moments' time. This is Kel on WhatsApp. Tom, I've always been overweight for about 30 plus years now. I don't meet the criteria to get the jab on the NHS, which I think is ridiculous, as I may end up with those conditions if I continue at the weight I am. Anyway, I went private to get the jab. I've been taking it for 6 weeks now. I've lost a stone and a bit. I've also changed my lifestyle. I attend the gym 4 times a week and eat mainly healthy meals. I feel great. The rules need changing. So many people have access to this drug, as it's amazing. I think that's what we're getting to. It seems very strange that someone who is obviously morbidly obese, 35, 36, 41 stone, still has to have 4 other conditions in order to access the weight loss jab. No. You're listening to Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Coming up,
the entire centerpiece of his economic policy and a weapon of potentially enormous discretion, which he wielded repeatedly over the past year, is gone.
Donald Trump will deliver his State of the Union address tonight, 2 a.m. our time. And what a state is in, we're going to hear from the former Trump cabinet minister and national security advisor, John Bolton. 5:45. Headlines, Amelia Colt.
MPs have voted to release files relating to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's appointment as the UK's trade envoy. The Prime Minister has hit out at Vladimir Putin for blocking the peace process on the 4th anniversary of his war with Ukraine. And Russell Brand will go on trial in June after pleading not guilty to 2 further sex offences, including rape. LBC weather, clear spells in central, southern and eastern England tonight. Cloudier elsewhere with outbreaks of rain for western Scotland and Northern Ireland, a low of 6 degrees.
LBC travel line, Dave Goff. There are severe delays on the M25 anti-clockwise. One lane is closed because of an accident before junction 6 for Godstone. On the M25 anti-clockwise, there are also queues because of emergency barrier repairs between junction 28 for the A12 and junction 27 for the M11, where 2 lanes are closed. There are severe delays on the M11 in both directions after emergency repairs earlier between junction 5 for Loughton and junction 4 for the North Circular. There are queues in Rainham on the A13 going out of town. There's 1 lane closed because of an accident before the Wennington interchange. In Islington, Caledonian Road is closed both ways because a water main has burst, putting Copenhagen Street and Stanmore Streets at the hard queues. On the tube, there's no Bakerloo line between Harrow and Wealdstone and Stonebridge Park.
Coming up at 6 on LBC Tonight with Andrew Marr.
As the government struggles to get back on track after Peter Mandelson's arrest, and ahead of Thursday's by-election, I'll be talking to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting.
Tonight with Andrew Marr from 6. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is £124 million. I think that deserves a whoop whoop. Thank you, faraway person. Get in tonight's Euro Millions draw. Play on app.
Estimated jackpot. Account terms, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Call Tom Swarbrick 0345 6060 973 LBC.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group Clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
For the nappies, peekaboos and tea parties. Mess, tantrums and sleepless nights. All those yo-yos, action figures and shinies. Lifts to mates, lifts to parties, lifts everywhere. For each and every one of those teenage years. Let's be honest, you probably owe your parents one. So tell them about pension credit. It could boost their pension income by an average of over £4,000 a year. Pension credit. Credit where credit's due. Eligibility criteria apply.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out a car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with club card prices. We offer a range of cover options, so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
Big Motoring World are big on choice. But what does that mean for you? Well, we have thousands of cars in stock. So let's say you want a Mini, an electric one, in black, with a panoramic roof, Apple CarPlay, heated leather seats, rear view camera. Yep, there it is. Being big means we're more likely to have the right car for you. Big Motoring World. We're big on choice. See website for nearest store.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be. With headspace to focus on more important matters. Like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at Thameslink.railway.com. Terms apply.
Donations to British Heart Foundation fund scientific research that can help save lives. People like Joe, who's pitching his next big business plan. Maria, who's sending out her wedding invitations, and Jack, who's just being a teenager again. Because when you donate, you fund more than just science. You help save lives. British Heart Foundation funds research that aims to cure inherited heart muscle diseases. But our work is not done. Donate now at bhf.org.uk and keep us beating.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
10 to 6 the time. We're going to preview of the State of the Union address from Donald Trump tonight from his former National Security Advisor in just a moment. Zara's a first-time caller in Nottingham first. Hi, Zara.
Hi, you okay?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Your challenges with getting this weight loss drug?
Yeah, it's the Mounjaro. I mean, the thing is, firstly, the biggest bill on the NHS is obesity, so why would they want to scrap that bill? Secondly, no, I'm being honest. Secondly, each diabetic is individual, because the thing is, obesity causes diabetes. I mean, you can get type 1 only until you're 35. When you're 35 and over, you can get type 2 only, which can reverse. Now, the Mounjaro was designed a long time ago. The gentleman who invented the Wagumi. So, what is, when you're type 2 and you're about to go into type 1, it's the blocker insulin. It's trying to stop you going into type 1. Yes. It has a GLP-1. It's a molecule, the Mounjaro. So it has two important molecules. Yes. The GLP-1, which triggers the brain to the stomach to say, I'm hungry. This is the craving.
Stops you with the food noise.
This is the food noise, exactly that. And then you've got the GLP-2, which controls the sugars once your brain says you need to eat. Yes. So what the Mounjaro does, it suppresses GLP-1,
And that's massively helpful for people, isn't it, in making them get the food noise volume right down so that they can stop eating so much, which is precisely what people need. Zara, I appreciate the call. Thank you. Next. With Henry Riley on LBC at about 2 o'clock this morning. The US Capitol packed to the rafters with the country's top lawmakers, Supreme Court justices, and leaders to hear that address. But how is the current state of the nation, particularly after the Supreme Court decision on Trump's tariffs? Ambassador John Bolton, former US National Security Advisor in the first Trump administration, and former US Ambassador to the US.
Well, I think it's very turbulent in the State of the Union. We remain a divided country on many issues. The political balance is really too close to call, and there's still 3 more years of Trump's term in office. But the Supreme Court decision in the tariff case on Friday really is going to be one of the most important in Supreme Court history, and certainly one of critical importance in the Trump administration. It was a very well-reasoned opinion by Chief Justice Roberts. It said what had to be true, that the president did not have any inherent constitutional power to tax through tariffs or anything else, and that the statute that was in question, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, clearly did not give any authority to impose tariffs. The entire centerpiece of his economic policy, a major part of his foreign policy, and a weapon of potentially enormous discretion, which he wielded repeatedly over the past year, is gone. And he and his supporters can make brave noises about Section 232 or Section 301. Those are there. But they are nothing like the authority he claimed and which the Supreme Court took away from him.
Do you think to that extent he is heading to lame duck territory?
Yes, I think this has been true since the off-year elections we had in November of 2025, gubernatorial races in Virginia, New Jersey, a number of other local races, and a huge variety of other factors. I think we've passed peak Trump. I think he's over the hill now and heading down. I don't want to say how fast or how soon he'll reach the bottom. But this Supreme Court decision coming days before the State of the Union message was really a blow amidships to his the centerpiece of his policy.
That obviously relates to Britain because of the tariffs that are going to be applied, but possibly only for 150 days. Let's see. Clearly, one of the other areas on which Trump has obfuscated when it relates to Britain is this deal on the Chagos Islands. He has been flip-flopping all over the place, but do you think it is a deal that should be signed and welcomed by America?
No, I think it's a bad deal for Britain. It's a bad deal for America. It's a bad deal for the West. That base on Diego Garcia was put there for a reason. The British Indian Ocean territories were carved off from Mauritius. You can go back and look at the history. They did not have a long history together. We can debate what happened to the Chagosians themselves, but in terms of any clear understanding of international law, and notwithstanding advisory opinions from so-called international courts, Britain has sovereignty over that territory. It should not give anything to the Mauritians, especially given their close relations with China. And this incredibly important base needs to be retained. And, you know, when the deal was struck in the mid-1960s, as came out publicly very late in this process, there was an exchange of letters between the UK and the US where the UK asserted sovereignty and said it would keep it. So that was a precondition for our agreement on the Diego base. And I think if Trump simply said, look, I'm insisting on what you said in 1966, that's it, case closed.
That base is obviously, as you say, a joint US-UK base, although it seems that the UK has not given the US permission to use it were the US to strike Iran. Do you think striking Iran is close?
I don't know because it involves trying to read Trump's mind, which is nearly impossible. I think as a practical matter, because he drew a red line back in January saying to the Ayatollahs, if you don't stop killing your people, I'm coming after you, basically. He has to use force to vindicate that red line. Otherwise, he looks like Obama and Cameron on Syria. The real question is, will Trump go beyond vindicating the red line with a kind of one-and-done strike and do something more strategic against the regime to help destabilize it even further and hopefully advance the cause of regime change?
Even if that could precipitate something worse after it, we don't know what comes after it. Not very good at nation building.
Well, I would say this. I don't think you can get a worse government than the Revolutionary Guard and the Ayatollahs. I don't doubt there would be turmoil. These authoritarians have ruled for over 46 years, and there are scores to be settled. But I don't think the regime has ever been weaker since it came to power in '79.
And a final word, John. I don't know whether you are a football or soccer player, or whether you take much interest in it, but there's been a lot of controversy around the way in which ICE have policed various cities. ICE is central, we're told, to the security arrangements around the World Cup in the United States. There's obviously a problem in Mexico at the moment with the drug cartel boss being killed and resulting violence. Do you think the World Cup in the Americas is going to be a safe event, or is it how big a security risk is it?
Well, I think it's a safe event. I think Trump's handling of ICE and the Border Patrol and these internal efforts to pick up illegal aliens who have also committed crimes since they've been in the U.S. has been a resounding failure for him.
But all this idea of boycotting the World Cup,
I just think that is a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome. We all suffer from it to some extent, but I think it would be a mistake to boycott the World Cup.
Trump's former national security advisor, Ambassador John Bolton, not far from that World Cup, you know. Today, when it's been so sunny and so warm, and then tomorrow, when it's going to be the hottest day of the year, gives you a taste of what's to come. Because in a few months' time, it's going to be sunshine all round, and then later on in the evening, you're going to be able to watch the World Cup. God, I can't wait. You can hear the State of the Union address tonight at 2 a.m. I know you can't wait for that. Henry Riley will guide you through it on LBC this evening. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free LBC app, where you can also stay up to date with all the latest news, videos, and opinion. Download the official LBC app for free from your App Store now. Coming up at 7 on LBC, it's Ian Dale. Next, Tonight, with Andrew Marr.
Thanks, Tom. On a very busy day for the government, and in the wake of the arrest of Peter Mandelson, I'll be talking to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, about new GP contracts to allow more weight loss jabs and easier access for emergency appointments, but also, of course, about the condition of the government generally. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine enters its 5th year, you'll hear from a governor on the front line. I'll be asking the boss of the National Farmers Union about how the dreadful weather at the start of this year affects our food security, and I'll be hearing from one of Donald Trump's senior advisors about what to expect from this evening's State of the Union address. The world, and in particular Iran, will be watching. All of that, plus Reform unveils its economic agenda, so it's a busy old evening. Join me after the news.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 6 o'clock, the government has agreed to release files on the appointment of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as UK trade envoy. It came under heavy criticism during a debate in the Commons earlier. Trade Minister Sir Chris Bryant told MPs accounts of his character always follow the same pattern.
A man on a constant self-aggrandizing and self-enriching hustle. A rude, arrogant and entitled man who could not distinguish between the public interest, which he said he served, and his own private interest.
The former prince is accused of passing sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein while he held the role over a period of 10 years. He's always denied wrongdoing over his ties to the late sex offender. The Prime Minister says it's wrong to say Russia is winning the war on the 4th anniversary of its invasion of Ukraine. Sir Keir Starmer hit out at Vladimir Putin earlier for blocking the peace process. Russell Brand has denied 2 more sexual offences. The former comedian will go on trial in June. And Kemi Badenoch says the BBC has failed to learn the lessons from Glastonbury over its BAFTA coverage. The Conservative leader has been speaking to LBC after a racial slur was broadcast. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 4 points at 10,680. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.14. LBC weather, clear spells in central, southern and eastern England tonight. Cloudier elsewhere with outbreaks of rain for western Scotland and Northern Ireland. A low of 6 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC. LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. It's 6 p.m. Now, Tonight with Andrew Marr.
Good evening. Don't get overexcited, but I have a thought for you. There is, I suggest, a hidden race or competition going on in British politics and the media all day and more or less every day. And if you don't notice it, it's hard to get what's really happening. This is a race between normal governing, the grinding on of the parliamentary state, what ministers want to do, and, on the other hand, the much more volatile, exciting and dangerous struggles of reputation and authority, what you might call raw politics, the dark side. This is what holds ministers back and is always in danger of tearing them down, and today provides, I think, a perfect example. Normal governing. Well, ministers are pressing ahead with court reforms and major changes to special needs education in schools. Updated contracts for GPs, bringing, it's said, easier access for urgent appointments. And as the Ukraine war enters its 5th year, 300 new sanctions on Russia. In Washington, a new ambassador prepares to grapple with Trump's changes to tariffs. So, all the stuff that governments must do. And if you make the effort, you'll read about these and hear about them, but they won't necessarily make the headlines. But there is the other side of the competition for your attention, the dark side. Peter Mandelson, arrested. Another minister, Josh Simons, investigated by the Prime Minister's ethics advisor of accusations he falsely accused journalists of having links to Russian propaganda. A drive in the Commons to get the maximum dirt on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, dirt we must assume will also embarrass the government. And all of this in a week which culminates in Thursday's by-election at the Manchester seat of Gorton and Denton. Itself part of the story of Keir Starmer's fight to persuade his party to allow him to keep his job. So which matters more, the governing bit or the politics bit? Now, I know what we journalists think. We have a weakness for the dark side, and that's what makes the headlines. But what do you think? Let me know in the normal way. Text 84850 or email mar@lbc.co.uk. Well, let's talk first this evening to a minister who brings the governing side of the story, the GP contracts I was mentioning earlier. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. Wes, welcome to the studio. Let's start with the GP contracts. Still already a certain amount of dissatisfaction with the BMA or worry with the BMA about them. You won't be surprised by that. But are you convinced that these contracts will actually mean quicker appointments when it's urgent for people like me and you and people listening to this show?
Yes, and I say that now from a point of experience. So the last GP contract, when we came in, we put £1.1 billion into general practice with the biggest uplift in a generation. That's enabled us to now have 2,000 more GPs in the NHS today than we did when Labour came in. Patient satisfaction with access to general practice has gone from 60% to 75%. And we've rolled out online access across the country. In fact, in December, 7 million patients across the country accessed their GPs via the online channel. Now, when we said we'd do online access, the BMA were very concerned. They were worried it wouldn't work, that we were asking too much. But broadly speaking, and of course there were always some places that struggle a bit more than others, but broadly speaking, it's been a success. And so here we are today with the next round of the contract, an extra 485 million on top of the 1.1 billion we put in last year, a real terms increase in funding, and that will fund the equivalent of 1,600 full-time equivalent GPs. And this focus, as you say, on making sure that we are not just measuring, but delivering same-day access in urgent cases. But I'm now in a position, having been in this job for over 18 months now, approaching 2 years in July, where I can now say to people, the reason you should trust this is not because of the quality of our promises, but the fact we've kept our promises so far and it's moving in the right direction. Even though, let's take that patient satisfaction number, 3 in 4 satisfied, I'm happy with that. 1 in 4 dissatisfied, I'm not happy about that, and I'm determined to sort that out.
Another part of these contracts is to persuade GPs to give more anti-obesity drugs. Now, I understand there is an unfairness that poorer people are unable to access these drugs and wealthier people are able to. However, there is evidence now that once you're on these drugs, when you come off them, you put weight on again very, very fast. And I just wonder whether this is a bit of a fad and is a sensible way to be spending taxpayers' money.
I don't think it's a fad, but I do think that people need to understand this medication is an aid in the fight against obesity. It's not a cure, and it's not a miracle cure, and you still need to do things like balanced diet, exercise, building your muscle density and mass and your bone density, and that's where I think these weight loss jabs can be very, very important. But it was really interesting what you said at the top about the distinction between governing and politics. This is where the politics comes into governing. The thing I've been uncomfortable about for a long time now is that there's a lot of evidence to support weight loss jabs, but the people that are accessing them are those who can afford them. And the tragedy is that lots of people who struggle with obesity are also struggling with the bills. And so part of what I'm trying to do through the NHS is make sure we've got healthcare based on need and not the ability to pay. And that's part of what we're driving at with the GP contracts. And again, I won't have solved all of the issues with access to weight loss jabs with what we're announcing today, but I'm moving the NHS in the right direction.
Let me turn to the dark side, or at least the Dark Lord. Peter Mandelson was a close ally of yours for a long time. What happened to him has been absolutely sensational, and let's be candid, it has been damaging to your wing of the party, to the Blairite wing of the party, because it casts a pall over that. As somebody who worked with him for a long time, do you think he hid from you part of his character that you have now seen revealed?
I think from everyone. I mean, look, I'm of a different generation, so where Peter Mandelson was supportive of my generation. When I came into Parliament in 2015, was around issues like Europe, campaigning to stay in the European Union, trying to make the Labour Party electable again, and that is the support he gave not just to me but to others. And look, when you mention that sort of moniker of the Dark Lord, Prince of Darkness, it was always kind of done in the media, often in quite a tongue-in-cheek way.
I think it came from him, tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, and I'm afraid I think the thing that has been most shocking, and what's interesting, you listen to someone like Gordon Brown, who really did work extremely closely with Peter Mandelson in the opposition days pre-97, trying to rebuild the Labour Party then. I think everyone was shocked that he could both betray Epstein's victims in the way that he obviously did by maintaining that relationship, also betray the trust of not just one but two British Prime Ministers, firstly Gordon Brown with the secrets he was sharing, and then Keir Starmer by not being upfront.
We obviously have to be very careful.
Mindful there's a police investigation. And back to I was just thinking again about what you said.
I'm just really wondering whether you yourself feel a bit betrayed by him.
Well, not least because, Andrew, and this goes right back to what you said right at the top of the programme, and this distinction between kind of governing and the politics that's going on. At the same time as Peter Mandelson was being arrested, we were voting to lift 500,000 children out of poverty in Parliament. And I know which one got the most media attention and headlines, and that's not criticism media, by the way. It's just, of course, that was inevitable. But that is the tragedy in a way. And my fear is that people look at him and look at his conduct, and they just go, yeah, this is what politicians, you're all the same, tarred with the same brush. And not just those of us in the Labour Party, although I think we feel the betrayal most acutely, but actually right across politics. And so we've got a massive challenge on our hands, because we've got to rebuild the economy, rebuild our public services like the NHS, and we've got to rebuild trust in politics as well.
And put this government back on track, frankly, after the most extraordinary few weeks. Now, a few weeks ago, an awful lot of people in politics, and I was one of them, thought that Prime Minister Keir Starmer was in his last legs. He was on the way out. He is clearly fighting back a lot. And as somebody who's always said to be, a possible alternative to Keir Starmer, I wonder what you think about his position now.
Never underestimate Keir Starmer. He does have this total core of steel. He is in it for the right reasons. And one of the reasons that I've been proud to work with him for a long time now, since from the day one he became leader of the Labour Party, and he asked me to be on his front bench, initially in the Shadow Treasury team, and then right through to being the Health Secretary in his government. And what I've seen from him is someone who is in it for the right reasons, really believes in public service, doesn't want to let the country down. And so I'm not going to pretend these have been the easiest weeks for the government, but my goodness, when I think about what we have done during those weeks to deliver the change that people voted for, I wouldn't swap the worst day of the last few weeks for the best day of opposition. And even yesterday, where we saw the worst of politics on the 6 and 10 o'clock news with the Mandelson arrest, we saw the best of politics with Labour MPs voting to lift kids out of poverty. And the reason we're doing that, by the way, is because governing and politics are intertwined. We're not all the same. There's a values-driven contest going on in this country at the moment, and this is a big fight between Labour, increasingly the Reform Party, and this is a real battle of ideas and a real choice about what the future of this country looks like. So the pressure we all feel, the Prime Minister, myself, the whole team, the pressure we all feel is not wanting to let the country down and not wanting to give way to what the alternative looks like, whether that's dismantling the NHS as Farage wants to do, or whether it's the politics of grievance and hatred that Reform feeds on.
You were personally on the receiving end of some pretty vicious briefing from Number 10 a few weeks ago, and a lot of people, I don't know whether you did, but a lot of people thought that was Morgan McSweeney having a go at you because you were a rival to Keir Starmer. Morgan McSweeney has now gone, but the briefing has not gone. There's more briefing a couple of days ago and again today that Wes Streeting has to be sacked from the Cabinet because you're a distraction, you're too ambitious, and you're rocking the boat.
So I'll just pull back the curtain a bit on what goes on behind the scenes. Because there was that, I saw that piece in the Sunday Telegraph, but I knew about it at the weekend. Because what the Telegraph did was a classic fishing expedition. They ring round special advisors, they invite people to offer comment, and then they can write up this story. And I knew that because another special advisor in government got in touch with me and my team and said, just so you know, this is what's going on. And Downing Street absolutely stamped on it. And that's why when I saw the story on the Sunday, it's kind of water off your duck's back, and I think people should focus on the jobs that the Prime Minister's asked us to do.
And it's come again. Are you sure Keir Starmer doesn't want you out?
Yes, I am actually, and I'm proud to work for Keir Starmer. I'm proud of the progress we're making, but my goodness, the job is far from done, and I love this job. I think, as I've spoken to you about before, Andrew, being the Health and Social Care Secretary means a lot to me personally. The NHS saved my life. It's done a lot for my family in recent days and weeks. And I also, last night, I lie awake last night because for all of the progress we're making on waiting lists are lowest in 3 years, ambulances arriving faster this winter than last winter, patient satisfaction with general practice up. But last night I lay awake because I spent almost 4 hours yesterday with the Leeds families who've been victims of some of the worst maternity failings. And I was also thinking about the 97-year-old woman who was reported in the newspapers at the weekend who died on the floor alone because the NHS wasn't there for when she needed it. So that's more driving me and motivating. Yeah, and to be honest, it keeps it all. To be honest, it keeps everything else in perspective. And politics is about a battle of ideas, about how you make things better, and how you drive real change for people and for our country, and that is the thing that all of us are focused on. All the rest of it is the soap opera bit of politics. To be honest, it's trivial set against the challenges we're trying to deal with.
Wes, can I ask you, have you found the last few weeks personally difficult?
It's funny, I mean, look, they've not been an easy few weeks, but honestly, in terms of the challenges I've had over the years, whether going through cancer and coming out the other side, or the experiences I had growing up, which I've written about and spoken about, like pressure, no, not really compared to those things. And it does, when you've been through cancer and you've come out the other side, it just gives you a perspective on things. You know exactly what that feels like.
Talking about, yep.
And so that's like I'm a resilient person, but also I've got. It's all very nice that people are very interested in what jobs I might do in the future. The Prime Minister has given me a very important job to do now. It's one that I relish, it's one that I enjoy. I'm grateful to him for giving me this opportunity to serve our country in this way. And for as long as he wants me, I will carry on doing the job. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm supporting him, supporting the government, and supporting the whole team to deliver the change that we were asked to do by the voters.
And very last question, I don't want to go into the details of it, but are you confident you're going to win the by-election on Thursday?
We are fighting for every vote, and what I've seen...
That's what they always say.
Yeah, I know, but to be honest, I don't want to jinx any. I think they've run a phenomenal campaign. I think we've got a brilliant candidate in Angeliki Stoya, and there are other candidates who are available. I know on radio. Lucy Powell has run a brilliant campaign up there as our deputy leader. Keir was there yesterday. I think people are
unusual for a prime minister by-election these days, isn't it?
Well, he's leading from the front, and look, come what may on Thursday, we've given it everything, and I think voters can increasingly see that this is a two-horse race between Labour and Reform.
All right, OK. Wes Streeting, thank you very, very much indeed for coming in and being so candid. And I'm just going to repeat that Peter Mandelson has not been charged with anything and that he denies all the allegations against him. Now, listening to all of that was our political editor, Natasha Clark. Natasha, let's just start with what happened in the House of Commons today. We haven't talked about that yet. With a very, very personal and angry attack on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor from Chris Bryant, the Minister at the Dispatch Box, and a genuine acceptance by the government that a lot of the documentation, the detail, is going to be released.
Yeah, that's right, Andrew. Some more extraordinary scenes in the House of Commons today. MPs have voted, again without a real vote, we should say, to release more files from the heart of government. This time it's about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's role as a trade envoy. The government this time decided to try and avoid a row with their backbenchers and the mess of the last humble address where the Tories tried to force them to release the documents about Lord Mandelson a few weeks ago. Initially, you'll remember, they tried to fight it. This time they said quite early on they would get behind the Lib Dem motion. And you're right, Andrew, Chris Bryant was absolutely scathing in the House of Commons today, painting such a grim picture of the former prince. He told MPs that he'd been described as a rude, arrogant and entitled man who could not distinguish between the public interest and his own private interest. He said the government would comply with this motion to get these documents out as fast as we can. Of course, the live police investigation is going to be a reason for any possible delays there. I think, Andrew, it's obviously a little bit easier for the government to throw Andrew under the bus today. It's fair to say that it's not this government. He wasn't appointed by Sir Keir Starmer, and even now the King has basically spoken out against his own brother. You can see why the government are happy in one way to do this. But on the other hand, Andrew, I wonder if the government might be opening up a bit of a Pandora's box here. The nature of this release of so many documents about what's happening in government and the relationship with the royals is completely unprecedented, and it might not embarrass this government, but it is going to embarrass governments of past. It could put out a lot of information as well, Andrew, and you heard Wes Streeting there talking about wanting to clean up politics and restore trust. A plague on royal houses is a little bit of a risk with the government agreeing to this information coming out. Who are the public going to blame here?
Well, not us, I hope. For now, Natasha, thank you very, very much indeed. Great to get your perspective on all of that. I should also flag that a full list of the candidates in the Gorton and Denton by-election can be found on LBC's website. Today marks the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I'm going to speak to the Ukrainian governor who's near the front line to get his reflections. But the time now is 6:19.
This is LBC.
Hello, love. Day?
Right. Thanks for joining this all-staff meeting.
It's just you and me.
So, I think that we need to revisit tonight's dinner plans. Busy day, a lot of KPIs, a lot of KPIs. But I need you to order some spaghetti, tomatoes, a bottle of white, and 2 sticky toffee puddings. Let's circle back after you've ordered an Uber Eats.
Sure.
When you've officed enough, Uber Eats, and get all your groceries delivered. Check out for terms and restrictions.
Why are you abseiling down the front of your house, Ross? You have a staircase.
I like doing things the hard way, Albert.
Try something easier, Ross. Get cheaper off-peak energy. It's available at different times, like during the day or weekends. Just get a smart meter and choose a flexible scheme or tariff.
Ooh, I can batch cook some quiche.
Perfect. With a smart meter, getting cheaper energy is easier than you think.
Eligibility varies. Action required. Schemes and tariffs available to selected customers.
This time last year, Hassan was working in sales and spent his days gaming. Now, he's working as a prison officer. He stackled cell files, got through to some of the most challenging prisoners, and helped support their rehabilitation. He's done things he once thought he was never capable of. But he still loves his gaming. An extraordinary job done by someone like you. Search prison jobs now.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
6:21. There was a solemn international ceremony in Kiev earlier today, marking the 4th anniversary of the Russian invasion. A conflict which has become a blood-soaked meat grinder of strategic paralysis and human misery. Let's hear from Vitaly Kim, the governor of the frontline Mykolaiv Oblast. He was put into that post when the war broke out. How did he think the country and the war had changed 4 years on?
Lots of change. We are not so naive like we was in 2022. And obviously we became much more united and much more serious, much more, I don't know how to say, rude maybe. And talking about our people, we are very exhausted. But still we are very proud that we fighting for our democracy and for our freedom. So we are proud of ourselves, we are very exhausted, but still we are on our way to win.
This has become a test of endurance, really. Two sides kind of locked in endless combat, apparently. People say that your side has fewer people, fewer resources, that eventually, therefore, one day you must crumble. What do you say to people who say that?
You're absolutely right. If we were talking about small post-Soviet army against big post-Soviet army, obviously the big army will win. But we have another plan. And now Ukrainian military forces are much more mobile and resilient. The truth is on our side. We do not have a choice. Still, we know that today, especially today, it is for 4 years from the point when Putin was planning to get Kyiv for 3 days. So we cannot discuss about future because the plans were to win Kyiv for 3 days. 4 years already passed. So we do not know how much time we will resilient in future, but still we are not going to surrender because it is our home.
The Russians tried this winter again to destroy enough of the electricity supply to make people too cold, too dark to want to carry on. It was an attack on morale, really. And it's been another long winter. The spring is almost in sight. As you look forward to the spring, what is the mood of people? How have they come through this winter?
It was the most difficult winter for the last 4 years, to tell the truth. But Russia already failed because when they started attacked energy infrastructure, they showed their weakness. They didn't manage to win on a battlefield. They started to influence the moods of common people, of civilian citizens. Because Russia wants our people to be nervous and to argue for our president, for our parliament, and they tried their best to destroy critical infrastructure to get us cold, but they didn't manage it also. And this is, I see that Russia is witnessing it because we are destroying infrastructure, military infrastructure on the territory of Russia. Their logistics, their weapons and vehicles, and they are attacking critical infrastructure, civilian critical infrastructure. That's why the situation is not very good for Russia also.
One of the Russian calculations has been that if this war goes on long enough, Europe will lose attention. They will look away and forget and become bored, really, of the struggle and cease to support Ukraine. But it seems at the moment that European support for Ukraine is rising, even if American support is falling away a bit.
And you're absolutely right once again, because when the reality came and Europe and we was planning to fight without weapons, American weapons, to tell the truth. And for now we have this support from United Kingdom, from Europe and from United States, so we are it's much more easier now, because it was a threat that there will not support of United States in the military case, and it will be very hard for us. And you know, if it will happen, the problem of Ukraine will come to Europe. So Russia can fight one country by another, one by one. Unity is decrease aggression. And if you are weak, you will invite the aggressor to your country. So we need to be united because it is a common problem for whole Europe.
So in a sense, what you're saying to us is, I'm on the front line at the moment so that you don't have to be on the front line next.
Yes, and you know, because of the World War II, because we was the first country that was saying that there is a problem in Europe. They can attack us. We need to unite. It doesn't matter what politics are talking about. There will be not peace is not possible. They will attack. So now we are trying to say them the same way with you together, because Russia will not stop. We need to be united.
Well, Vitaly Kim, the very best of luck for the spring and the summer ahead. Thank you very much for talking to LBC.
Thank you very much.
Now, I also think we need to get a kind of journalistic view of this conflict a bit more generally. And so I spoke a little while ago to The Guardian's Luke Harding, who's in Kiev. What was his prediction for the future trajectory of the war?
I think there's no end to the war in sight, primarily because the Russians don't want to stop. Vladimir Putin thinks he can win through two possible ways. One is on the battlefield, where Russian forces have been grinding slowly forward, particularly in the east. And the other, of course, is via Washington and the sympathetic administration of Donald Trump. And really what Putin is doing is, in my view, trying to kind of play the Americans and get them to deliver what he's been unable to achieve militarily. So it's bloody, it's terrible. I mean, we're talking about 1.2 million Russian soldiers have been killed and injured. But at the same time, actually, the mood in Kiev is, I would say, surprisingly upbeat. And they've weathered a really terrible cold winter and made some kind of local gains. So it's not all doom and gloom here.
That's interesting, because the Russian strategy was to grind them down, exhaust them, demoralize Ukraine. Why do you think that hasn't worked, and how much is that about European support growing, even as American support falls away a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, if you just go back, Andrew, 4 years, Putin's genuine assumption was that he could conquer Kiev and Ukraine in a matter of days, mop up resistance, and really fold Ukraine back into a kind of new Russian empire, that this operation would be over in a matter of months. And he didn't believe that Ukrainians would resist. He thinks that Ukrainians are basically misguided Russians. And it's been an enormous strategic miscalculation. And, of course, Ukraine has fought back. It had support from America. That's fallen away under Trump. But it still has a coalition of the willing, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, 36 countries. And I think the other crucial factor is that Ukraine has been robotizing, industrializing, really transforming the nature of warfare so that it's no longer about tanks and fighter jets. It's about drones, cheap, expendable platforms that can kill Russians. And this is what we've seen, vast numbers of Russians dying to take relatively small areas of land.
I guess one of the biggest question marks hanging over all of this from the point of view of the West is whether or not really, if Putin wins in Ukraine, he'll go elsewhere. In other words, do you think this is meant to be phase one of the expanding Russian empire, or a one-off war which could go either way?
I think Putin lives in a delusional, messianic, alternative reality where the whole apparatus of the state tries to sort of create a vision of the world that he's comfortable with, in which Russia is persecuted, the West is out to get Russia, Ukraine is an implacable enemy, and so on. Now, this isn't really true, but my sense is that he wants to return the kind of sphere of influence that the Soviet Union enjoyed, so the Baltic states, dominion over Central and Eastern Europe, and he wants to be a co-equal with the United States, really carving up the world into spheres of influence. So gets the Western sphere, Greenland, and Russia really gets to dispose in Europe. He sees this as a kind of rolling existential war with the West, and you know, my sense is so long as he is there in power in the Kremlin, I mean, he's well into his 70s. I think, unfortunately, this war will continue. Not only a hot war in Ukraine, but lots of sabotage, informational operations, and other kind of diversionary acts in the UK and elsewhere.
So it's back to 1975, round two.
I mean, it's tempting to look at historical parallels. I mean, the late Soviet Union is one, but to be honest, I think my assessment is a bit bleaker. This feels to me more like the 1930s, because what we see in Putin's Russia is really a sort of totalizing project to de-Ukrainize Ukraine, to wave a magic wand and get rid of it from Europe's map, to exterminate its people, its culture, its history, its poets, and so on. And this isn't just about Ukraine's freedom. It's really about the future of the European continent and the kind of world we live in, whether it's one where international law, rules, decency still play some kind of a role, or whether it's kind of nihilism and the law of the jungle.
Well, it's very rare that I'm accused of being too optimistic, but that seems a highly realistic assessment. Luke Harding, thank you very, very much indeed for that.
Thank you.
Now, coming up, climate change is making farming more volatile, and the NFU's president says we need to prepare for long-term changes. I'm going to be talking to him next. Time now 6:32, and Amelia Cox has your news headlines.
In the last few minutes, lawyers for Lord Mandelson have claimed his arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office was prompted by concerns he's a flight risk. They claim the suggestion he was planning to leave the country and move abroad permanently is baseless. Downing Street says claims by Vladimir Putin that the UK is planning to supply Ukraine with a nuclear weapon is an attempt to distract from his atrocities. Sir Keir Starmer has hit out the Russian president for blocking the peace process on the 4th anniversary of the conflict. And a BBC boss has apologised to staff after the corporation failed to edit out a racial slur in its coverage of Sunday night's BAFTA Film Awards. The broadcaster says it understands how distressing it was after it was shouted by a Tourette's campaigner. LBC weather, clear spells in central, southern and eastern England tonight, cloudier elsewhere with outbreaks of rain for western Scotland and Northern Ireland, a low of 6 degrees.
This is LBC.
Across the country, thousands of drivers are feeling electric about switching to an EV, and here's why. They can go from London to Sheffield on a single charge that could cost around £5. They're ecstatic about that and the exhilarating feeling behind the wheel. Plus, with charging made simple at home, they're always ready for the drive ahead. I can see why they're into it. Switch to an EV and get that electric feeling. Costs and range dependent on tariffs, model and driving habits. For full details, visit gov.uk/clean energy.
I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do. Dominate your finances.
Sunday morning, listening to questionable financial advice from the FinTok Bros on his social feed.
Drowning in green. Scale, 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 scale.
This is the moment Isaac chose to search Barclays Life Skills, get some better money intel, and save up for that new skateboard. We're helping young people become money confident. Search Barclays Life Skills. Barclays. Make money work for you.
When you're smiling.
Banning Dental Group Clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is £124 million. I think that deserves a whoop whoop. Thank you, faraway person. Get in tonight's Euro Millions draw. Play on app.
Estimated jackpot. Account terms, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
6:34, and news just in. It's been really wet. The most sodden, squelchy start to the year many of us can remember. And later on, it's going to be very likely another absolutely scorching summer. What do these changes do to our ability to feed ourselves, to our agriculture? I'm joined now by Tom Bradshaw, President of the National Farmers Union, whose conference has just opened in Birmingham. Tom, thanks very much indeed for joining us tonight. Let's start with that fundamental question about the winter that we've just had. It has been absolutely miserable, and those of us ambling around urban centres dripping away have nothing on your members out in the fields. How differently are they thinking about what they're going to do next year and the year after that as a result?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? The volatility of our weather is so clear for everyone to see. We've got some parts of the country that have had over 50 days of consecutive rainfall this year. Fields are sodden, the floodplains are absolutely full of water. A lot of land is flooded. And we've just got to think about what that means for the long-term resilience. Where this water is being held up and is flooding farmland, very often it's protecting downstream conurbations, houses. And those farmers aren't being rewarded for holding up that floodwater. So there's a time here to look at the compensation that farmers are paid for protecting other people from flooding. We also have to think about the long-term maintenance of those watercourses. They're a part of our critical national infrastructure that help protect our ability to produce food, and they haven't been maintained properly for 30 years. We go from extreme wet to extreme drought, and that makes the volatility on farm very difficult for many to cope with, and makes them question whether they can carry on producing the crops and producing the country's food.
Does it mean they're going to have to think of different crops?
Well, unless we start growing rice, Andrew, I don't know what it is that we're going to be producing.
Well,
on
maybe we should. I don't know.
Well, there were trials actually in Cambridgeshire just this year, which is climate change no doubt will offer some opportunities, but I think we also have it's not a laughing matter, and the resilience of our food system. The conversation that you were just having about the tragic situation over in the Ukraine 4 years ago today. The volatility that we've seen right the way across the world, the geopolitical situation, we must have a plan for how we're going to produce this country's food. And it feels like at the moment we're taking it for granted that it will always be there. And yet farmers are struggling to make a profit from growing the crops, from producing the country's food. And we're seeing reducing production in many key areas. So we need a plan from government, we need a priority for domestic food production, and we need farmers to rebuild their confidence so we have the confidence and ability to invest for the future.
If I was dictator and I said to you, OK, Tom, what should I now do in terms of handling water in this country more differently? I mean, I know, for instance, in the dry season, in the summer, which gets drier and drier and drier, there is much more water in the west of the country than there is in the east. And there may be a case for moving some of it across the country to help farmers in the great grain basin of East Anglia and so on. Do you think there is a lot to be done in terms of handling our water better?
I think there's a huge amount to be done in terms of handling our water, but I think some of the solutions are actually on farm already. We just need to give farmers the ability to invest, to build reservoirs, to have flexible water abstractions so that when we have got times of flood, there's no restrictions on the amount of water that farmers can take to fill those reservoirs. I've got farmers saying to me, we'll happily build more reservoirs, but at the moment they can't use their annual investment allowance as a tax break to enable them to build the reservoirs that will guarantee the country's food supply. So we need to create that opportunity for dynamic investment and a water structure and infrastructure that really will deliver that food security for the future. We also need trade standards to match our own domestic standards. At the moment, we have an out of sight, out of mind attitude. We're relying on other countries around the world to produce our food. And at a time of geopolitical uncertainty like we're seeing, it's absolutely folly to rely on others to produce the food that we could produce here.
This sounds like the preface to a national conversation we really need to have. Tom, thank you so much. Supermarkets have started locking up their chocolate bars as retailers and police forces warn they've become the latest target for prolific shoplifters and organised crime gangs. Shabnam Chowdhury is a former detective superintendent in the Metropolitan Police. Shabnam, welcome to the show. Can I ask you, first of all, when I hear that chocolate is being shoplifted, I think of, as it were, kids with scabby knees running in, feeling a little bit of a sweet tooth, grabbing a chocolate bar and running off again. That's always happened. Are we talking about something fundamentally different here?
Good evening, Andrew. Yes, we are talking about something fundamentally different here. What we're talking about is organised teams, organised criminals who already have their handlers, so to speak, lined up so that they can steal large consignments of chocolate or alcohol or whatever it is, and they take it direct to those particular places, sell it at a price, and then they sell it at a price and make a profit. So we're not talking about the little kids that run in and they might pick up one bar of chocolate. You're talking about what you see on CCTV, people going into these stores, big stores, small stores, whichever ones, open bag and literally just shoveling large chocolates and goods into those bags. So quite a problem for those particular types of...
Sure. And Shabnam, what do we know about these gangs, how they're organised, where they come from, how they're based?
Well, demographically, they come from all different places. If you look at different parts of London, they'll have different types of goods that they might steal. So one might be chocolate, one might be alcohol, whatever it is that the handler wants. So they will go in and they'll go to other stores where they actually sell these goods to, who may say to them, we're after this week chocolate or we're after alcohols. as much as you can possibly get. If you sell chocolate, which is say £2.60 per bar, and you sell a large consignment of them for 30, 40, 50, 60 quid, that is a lot for a day for a criminal who isn't potentially doing just those type of crimes, probably going out and committing a range of other crimes which are probably interlinked with mobile phone thefts, a whole range of, these are career criminals.
I'm sorry to jump in. I know that a lot of shopkeepers are absolutely furious and desperate about this. Looking at the police, is there anything more that can and should be done to help them?
Well, I think in fairness to the police, they've done quite a lot. I think last year they had Operation Zoridon, where they cracked down on a significant number of shoplifters that have been identified, prolific offenders. I saw 2 weeks ago in Wood Green, they were running an operation where they had plainclothes detectives in certain stores. They lifted what you call 4 shoplifters, I think, in a day. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're targeting particular prolific offenders, then that's a bonus in itself. I think the other thing that they're doing is that they're dishing out criminal behaviour orders, antisocial behaviour orders to stop them from facial recognition, securities, working with other sort of stores as well.
All essential, but a lot more to do. Thank you very much indeed for talking to me tonight. Now, later tonight, President Trump gives his first State of the Union address to Congress in this second presidency. He will undoubtedly hit back at the Supreme Court judges who struck down his tariff strategy, and they will be there sitting listening to him. Let's hear next from Brian Lanza, one of the key figures in the transition to the second Trump presidency. What did he make of the drama surrounding this year's address?
We go through this experience every year. I think you saw when President Barack Obama had to confront the Republican justices, during his tenure. You saw that tension. I think the tension is higher. I mean, because President Trump is not afraid to criticize the court. He has shown that. He has shown that he's very comfortable making personal attacks, and he's not happy with this last Friday's court decision. So it's going to be a barn burner for sure.
Barn burner indeed. Everybody I talk to seems to think that this will be quite heavily dominated by foreign policy, which right at the moment must mean Iran, given the huge American armada sitting off the coast there. What is your best guess about what President Trump really wants from this?
Yeah, listen, I think what the president wants is he wants to show how in control he is of the U.S. government and its apparatus, right? And so you're going to have some components that are going to talk about the economic situation, which is, if you look at the economy where it was 2 years ago, it is better. It's not better faster, it's just better. I think the voters want it faster because the president promised it to be overnight, and it's just not an overnight process. But it's also hard to ignore the world events. It's hard to ignore Russia, Ukraine. It's hard to ignore Iran. It's hard to ignore Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela, just this year we were able to depose a leader, and it looks like we're working with the current government. There's been a lot of action on the international stage. It's just, it occupies the president's time. I think if the president had his choice, he would like to 100% focus on restoring the American economy to what it was in his first term. But world events, have a trick of getting
intervening. Yes. Let me ask you directly then again about Iran, because I think around the world people are scratching their heads and they can't work out whether President Trump's end game is a much better deal on the nuclear side than, for instance, President Obama got, or whether he really wants regime change. He really wants to push this further and knock out this particular Iranian regime.
I don't think the answer is yes. President Trump wants something better than what President Barack Obama did, because all Barack Obama did is just allow the terrorists to run wild, in the Middle East. And so President Trump wants better than that. Is it regime change? Is it nuclear incapacitation? I think it's both at this point.
Both.
I think, I do believe that. You cannot put that many military assets in that region and just say we're just going to drop a couple bombs. I think he's preparing, for regime change. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I think every evidence that you see that's there is all to show that he has optionality, that if he can negotiate some type of nuclear agreement with this radical government, that his only hand is regime change.
I think nobody believes there's going to be boots on the ground. It would be an actual invasion, as with Iraq. So the question then is, if there is regime change, if there is sufficient damage done to the Iranian government structure that it falls, what regime does President Trump or anybody else in America want to replace it with?
We want one that's not going to terrorize the international community, that's not going to terrorize its neighbors, that's not going to funnel terrorism throughout the world. That's the regime the United States wants, and I suspect that's the regime that Europe wants. We want Iran welcome into the international community, be a good partner in this international space that we exist, and stop terrorizing and creating proxies that terrorize Israel and the United States. That's what we want.
I guess the reason I'm asking is the lesson of Iraq is one may want to go to a kind of Pacific, democratic, modern kind of regime, but getting from here to there is a very, very difficult path. We find that in Iraq, and Iran is an even bigger country with many more ethnic tensions, many more religious differences, languages and so forth. Getting to the kind of government we'd be comfortable with there is very hard indeed.
Yeah, I would say it's very hard if you're trying to get if you're trying to get democracy in some of these places. But what the world has shown us time after time is if you're willing to push democracy to the side and put a strong leader in there, that works. That has a strong ally to the United States, because that works for us. We saw that previously with Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was somebody who the U.S. leadership approved of, and he kept those factions in place, and it wasn't a democracy there. I don't think we're looking to push what President Bush did in the early 2000s and try to expand democracy. We're just trying to make sure that the terrorists, are no longer have the capability to harm us, and if it means them putting a strong man in Iran that stops terrorizing its neighbors, that stops terrorizing the United States, I think we'd be okay with that.
So a return possibly to a Shah, back to the Pahlavi regime, would be a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, Shah's your phrase. We're just going to use a strong man. We're going to use somebody who has the ability to put all factions rowing in the right directions. We're not going to be seeking to expand their nuclear capabilities so that they can force the negotiations to the United States at gunpoint.
This is a story with a long way still to go. Brian Lanza, thank you very, very much for talking to LBC tonight.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Reform UK unveiled their plans for business today. Very interesting they were too. We'll find out more about them next. The time now is 6:48.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
At 9, Tourette's and the N-word. At 8, cross-question. But first, the government says it can't unclog the courts or make student loans fairer. What's the point of them?
Ian Dale at 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out the car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with club card prices. We offer a range of cover options so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
A Southern train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be. With headspace to focus on more important matters. Like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
Do you know your state pension age? No. Maybe you're not sure. Or you don't know how to check. It's so quick and easy to check online. All you need is your date of birth. Knowing your state pension age helps you think about your future. So check yours today. Search state pension age on gov.uk and simply enter your date of birth. State pension age. It's good to know.
It's the last chance to get yourself a ticket for Wednesday's Lotto draw.
It could be you.
Lotto. From the National Lottery. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, tonight with Andrew Marr.
It's 6:50. After Nigel Farage allocated key portfolios to his Reform lieutenants, we're getting a lot more flesh on the bones of the insurgent party's policy ideas. Tonight, it's the turn of the party's business leader. Richard Tice, who joins me in the studio now. Richard, there's lots and lots of things that you've been laying out today, and I want to go through a few of them. Let's start with the pensions industry.
Yes.
Now, pensions companies exist for one purpose and one purpose only, which is to pay pensioners. But you're going to scoop up, what, about 100 of the pension funds and create a new sovereign wealth fund. That sounds to me a lot like nationalising the pensions industry.
Far from it. We're talking about creating a £500 billion sovereign wealth fund along the lines of what we enviously look at in the likes of Norway and Singapore. And we can actually have the best of both worlds, where we can proudly pay the pensions of the existing members, but we can also back British companies, British products, British entrepreneurs.
So who decides how to spend the money from the sovereign?
The key thing is we've got a no-growth environment at the moment. Things have gone badly wrong in the economy, and I've talked about deregulator, I've talked about energy, but this sovereign wealth fund will be one of the top 8 in the world. And the thing about the local government pension scheme, which is just for council workers, 98 funds, it's being massively overcharged, ripped off by excessive fees by a factor of about 4, £2 billion a year. It's underperforming year in, year out by in the order of 8 to 10 billion pounds a year. I'm the first person who's got to grips with this and say we can do much, much better and we can get the best of both worlds. These pension funds, by the way...
I'm sorry to jump in, but if I'm a pensioner in one of these pension funds, I might think the people that I employ, they may be not very good at it, but nonetheless, they're employed solely to pay my pension. And now we're going to have a reform government, who are going to decide how the money is going to be invested. I don't trust the government.
Well, the key thing is that all of the rights, the benefits and the entitlements are absolutely sacrosanct and remain identical, of course. Actually, this would be better run by higher class, best in class investment professionals. We've got lots of those. There'll be lower fees, so the performance will improve.
But the investment is going to be directed by government.
Well, at the moment, the investment is directed by investment professionals. No, by investment professionals. That's who it is at the moment. The truth is, they're not doing a very good job, and it's the taxpayer who loses.
So it's going to be government to decide.
Essentially, at the moment, it's councils that decide, which is a part of government. So in a sense, that's no different. You just need higher quality people. You need to pay the right amount of money to do it. You get higher returns, and the taxpayer is the one who benefits, because all of these pension members...
I'm sorry, I come back to my fundamental point. It is the government who's going to decide how to invest this money.
Currently, it's the councils who decide where to allocate the investment managers. They're doing a terrible job. What I'm saying is we can do it better, and you can get the best of both worlds. These funds are being poorly managed, and it's the taxpayer who's losing out to the tune of 10 to 12 billion pounds a year. That's real money, because these are all defined benefit pension schemes, so the liabilities are essentially fixed and capped, subject to inflation.
You're saying you can find better managers. That's what you're saying.
The highest quality managers, we can do much better. The sort of returns that you see from the Norway pension fund or the Canadian pension funds that are much better than what these are delivering, which is underperforming consistently. No one's holding them to account until I've come along.
A smaller question perhaps, but there are something like 50 to 100,000 people employed by the British pensions industry as fund managers and advisors and the rest of it.
Most of those costs for private sector. I'm just talking about the public sector.
So how many people are going to lose their jobs to make this happen?
None at all. Most of those, Andrew, are all in the private sector. Okay, this is specifically to the local government pension schemes that are being overcharged and badly managed. And no one likes being overcharged. And I'm negotiating on behalf of the taxpayer who's being ripped off to a colossal degree. And we can actually use...
so you're going to nationalise what is local?
It's already essentially taxpayer-owned, Andrew. There's no difference in that. It's just better managed. You can back British companies.
Centralise what's local.
We're going to just do it better, okay? And the key thing is you can then back British companies. You can promote them, buy them, and proactively be pro-British about promoting British products. We can also build hundreds of thousands of additional affordable homes, local facilities in our regions to the tune of an extra £900 million per fund area. All of these are a massive win-win because we just do things better, and that's who we are.
Okay, you do things better. Let me ask you about some of your targets where you think things are not working at the moment. The workers' rights agenda is something that you want to rip up pretty much entirely, but it's very popular. I mean, when it comes to
not popular amongst young people who are not getting jobs. Youth unemployment has now exceeded the EU average because of these appalling legislation.
Across the population as a whole, the electorate as a whole, including your own voters, the unfair dismissal protections that Labour brought in approved of by 70% of people. And when it comes to the sick pay changes that Labour has made, approved of by 63% of people. 62% want them to go further. And you're saying get rid of them.
Until people lose their jobs. And we're seeing unemployment rise at the moment. We've seen 200,000 plus private sector jobs destroyed under this government. We're seeing youth unemployment essentially soaring because young people are not being employed because of the restrictions put in place. So I would gently suggest that the evidence and the data clearly shows that actually workers are being massively disadvantaged by this legislation, which, as I said in my speech today, well-intentioned.
So why do you think it's so popular? Why do you think workers' protection is so popular if it's so damaging?
We want workers' protections, but there's a balance, and they've got to
try and get rid of them.
No, Andrew. I want to go back to what was working rather well before, okay? Where we had lower unemployment, we had more jobs, particularly for young people. And there's a balance here, and this government has got the balance completely wrong, and already businesses are now, they're not hiring people. They're telling me, I meet them every week, they're saying the balance has gone too far, we're not hiring people. The result of that is that more people are on benefits, costing the taxpayer more money, and growth is low, and borrowing is higher. Those are the consequences.
You're against the renters' rights package as well, and again, 6 in 10 people support these measures. I mean, they're very, very popular.
But they don't support them when they have to pay higher rents because there's a lower supply of properties. Again, there's
a pattern here that you're taking quite unpopular positions in the hope of winning a big argument. Yes,
just applying common sense. Right? Nobody wants to pay higher rents. That's the consequence of less rental property in the market because of the consequences of the renters' rights bill. Again, they could have made some sensible improvements. They've just gone way too far, way beyond the boundaries.
And it's the same with fracking. You're pro-fracking. The country at the moment is not pro-fracking. But let me ask you about one of your colleagues, Danny Kruger. You'll have seen his speech today. And he wants to find government measures to oblige women or persuade women to have more children. And he's also interested in getting rid of no-fault divorces. A lot of female voters around the country will look at this and say, there's a lot of kind of white, posh, white men telling us what to do, and we won't like it.
It's about creating incentives. We know we've got a demographic issue, and we want to ensure that women have got more options, more choices, and they're not prevented or restricted because, for example, of the ever-rising cost of living, the ever-rising cost of childcare.
Is reversing no-fault divorce a reform policy?
But all of these things are being brought together by our policy team, of which Danny is a critical member, and we're looking at all sorts of suggestions coming in. What we do know is we've got too many people who are out of work, not contributing to our economy, and what we need is more prosperous families, more prosperous communities. That leads to a more prosperous country. At the moment, we've got 9 million people who are essentially out of work, not active in the economy. It's a disaster.
What we need more of is vigorous debates about policy, which I'm enjoying very much, but we are sadly out of time. Richard Tice, thank you very much indeed for that. If you missed any of today's show, folks, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can also stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 10 on LBC, it's Henry Riley. But right now, it's time for Ian Dale.
Thanks, Andrew.
We're putting the power in the hands of the court to decide where those cases should be heard.
2 government announcements today, both of which make me wonder what's the point of being in government if you just shrug your shoulders and say it's all too difficult. Justice Secretary David Lammy says abolishing jury trials won't solve the problem of clogged up courts, and the current delays will only get worse. And then the Education Secretary tells us that there's nothing she can do to make the student loan system fairer, and trying to do so wouldn't achieve anything. Aren't these symptoms of a government which lacks ambition or just basic competence? On Cross Question at 8, Dame Penny Mordaunt, Labour MP Preet Gill, Politics Homes Tom Scottson, and the editor of the article Daniel Johnson. At 9, why is the left eating itself over Tourette's and the N-word?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, lawyers for Peter Mandelson claim he was arrested due to the baseless suggestion he was preparing to flee the country. They claim the former US ambassador had agreed to a voluntary interview with police next month. Lord Mandelson was questioned last night over claims he passed sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein while he was business secretary. Health Secretary Wes Streeting has told Tonight with Andrew Marr the ongoing fallout from the Epstein files affects everyone in politics.
At the same time as Peter Mandelson was being arrested, we were voting to lift 500,000 children out of poverty in Parliament. And I know which one got the most media attention and headlines, but that is the tragedy in a way. And so we've got a massive challenge on our hands because we've got to rebuild the economy, rebuild our public services like the NHS, and we've got to rebuild trust in politics as well.
Mandelson's lawyers say his overriding priority is to cooperate with the police and clear his name. Meanwhile, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been described as rude, arrogant and entitled during a debate in the Commons. The former prince came under fierce criticism as MPs debated the release of files over his appointment as the UK's trade envoy. LBC's Helen Hoddinott has been following discussions.
So those character traits, while perhaps unappealing, aren't of course crimes. But what MPs want the release of these files to shine a light on is how and why someone so allegedly difficult was given the trade envoy role, trusted to represent the UK around the world.
Andrew is accused of passing information to Jeffrey Epstein while in the role, but has previously denied wrongdoing. The government and MPs backed the call to publish the documents. The UK has responded to Russian claims it's planning to provide Ukraine with nuclear weapons. British officials say the story is an attempt by Vladimir Putin to distract from his heinous actions. It's the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Vitaly Kim, who's governor of Mykolaiv Oblast, told Andrew Marr his people remain defiant.
Talking about our people, we are very exhausted. But still, we are very proud that we fight for our democracy and for our freedom. So we are proud of ourselves, we are very exhausted, but still we are on our way to win.
Donald Trump's new trade tariffs have come into effect at 10% lower than the rate he threatened over the weekend. Business groups say it offers some relief to UK companies, but also fresh uncertainty. The US president signed an executive order to impose new levies after the Supreme Court overturned his previous policy in a ruling on Friday. Former US National Security Advisor John Bolton has told LBC he thinks Trump is becoming a lame duck president.
I think we've passed peak Trump. I think he's over the hill now and heading down. I don't want to say how fast or how soon he'll reach the bottom. But this Supreme Court decision coming days before the State of the Union message was really a blow amidships to his the centerpiece of his policy.
You can hear Donald Trump's State of the Union address in full on LBC tonight. And BBC staff have received an apology from a senior executive over the failure to edit out a racial slur during coverage of the BAFTAs. The corporation's chief content officer, Kate Phillips, says it was aired in error and that the BBC understands how distressing it was. The Tourette's campaigner says he's deeply mortified after shouting while actors Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were on stage. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 4 points at 10,680. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.14. LBC weather, clear spells in central, southern and eastern England tonight. Cloudier elsewhere with outbreaks of rain for western Scotland and Northern Ireland, a low of 6. A very mild and bright day tomorrow for southern and eastern England. Cloudier elsewhere with some showers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, a high of 17 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Hobbs.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. 5 minutes past 7 is the time on LBC. It's Ian Dale here with you until 10. You know, there are times when I shake my head in disbelief at some of the things that politicians say. I often do my best to defend politicians as a species, because I do think most of them are trying to do their best. But then we come to a day like today, when you have two senior cabinet ministers, David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Justice Secretary, and Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, tell us that actually, you know, there's nothing they can really do. Now, they didn't quite say that, but almost. David Lammy has been telling us for months now that the way to solve the clogging up of our court system is to abolish some jury trials, and that would free up courts. Now, there's a certain logic to that if you think about it. But today, he's basically said, yeah, well, we are going to abolish jury trials for but we don't think that actually it'll free up the courts in the way that we thought. And indeed, the clogging up is going to get worse over the next few years, and we won't be able to unclog the courts for another 10 years. Well, thanks a lot. I mean, thanks a lot. You spent the last 6 months telling us that this is the solution, and now you basically tell us you haven't got a solution, but you're going to abolish these jury trials anyway. Then you hear the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillips, and I think she said this with Nick Ferrari this morning on a phone-in, where she was asked about Kemi Badenoch's plans on student loans, and she threw her hands up in the air and basically said, yeah, well, there's nothing really we can do to make the system fairer because it's the law of unintended consequences. And you think, well, what are we as voters supposed to make of that when in two very important areas which are affecting lots of people, two cabinet ministers basically say, well, we've almost given up. We can't make the system work better. What is the point of you? What is the point of being in government if you come to us, the British people, and say things like that? 0345 6060 973. Well, let's hear a little from David Lammy. This morning, the Justice Secretary was speaking at an AI-focused event in London and announced plans for a removal of the cap on the number of days in which courts are allowed to sit, and also an increased use of AI to help reduce the cases backlog. And he gave this warning.
If we do nothing at all, the Crown Court backlog will rise to around 200,000 cases by 2035. With the investment that I've announced, it comes down roughly to 174,000. If we reform, it falls to about 87,000. And if we make the courts more efficient, we can really bear down on the case load. And doing all three of these is how we turn the corner on the rising Crown Court backlog, which is my aim by the end of this Parliament.
But he's basically admitted that that won't happen. And then this afternoon, my colleague Tom Swarbrick asked the Courts Minister, Sarah Sackman, for evidence that the government plans to significantly reduce the number of cases heard by juries will actually save courts time.
What we have a right to in our system is a fair trial. 90% of trials currently have magistrates. Yep. We are reducing the amount of jury trial. What we're doing is in those less serious cases where you've got currently, under the current system, a triable either way offence. A defendant has the right to insist on a jury trial irrespective of the seriousness of offence. So if I were to steal an iPhone from Curry's, say, I could say, I want a jury trial, even though that same case could be heard 4 times faster in the magistrates' court. We know that those equivalent cases are heard faster in the magistrates' court. And so by removing the right to elect, removing the defendant's right, we're putting the power in the hands of the court to decide where those cases should most be appropriately heard.
Sarah Sackman there. Well, Cassia Rowland joins me, senior researcher for the Institute for Government think tank, who focuses on the criminal justice system and how it's performing. Cassia, very good evening. I mean, we all know that the criminal justice system isn't performing as it should. We can go into all of the reasons for that, but let's look to the future. Is David Lammy's plans likely to reduce the clogging up of the court system over the next 3 years?
Hi, well, I think it's fair to say I'm not David Lammy's favourite person just at the moment because I've been quite critical of some of these plans. But I am going to defend him here and say I think they would be effective and would reduce the backlog in time. But the really difficult thing about the position we're in at the moment is that we're paying for decisions that were made 8, 10 years ago, right? That's kind of the root of the problem that we've got now. And it takes a really long time to turn that system around. So I think there are absolutely things that we can do quickly that will start to have an impact. But I think being honest it is unlikely that the case backlog will start falling quickly.
Well, an immediate thing would be to, as of tomorrow, increase the number of courts available, whether it's Crown Court, Magistrates Court, whatever, because they seem to start at 10 o'clock. You could bring that time forward, you could get them sitting later in the day, you could have evening courts, you could have night courts. It surely depends on the resources that you're willing to put into it.
It does to some extent, but the real limiting factor at the moment in the court is actually having enough lawyers to run them. So yes, you can potentially extend your hours that courts are sitting or open up empty courtrooms, but if you haven't got enough lawyers to represent both sides of that case, then you just end up wasting more time and money because those courts are sitting empty. And it takes, obviously, time to get people upskilled and trained in the same way that we can't increase our number of surgeons tomorrow. We can't increase our number of criminal lawyers tomorrow. That takes quite a long time. And I think some of the things that the government's doing are really sensible on that. You know, they're trying to increase the number of criminal lawyers that we're training. They've increased fees to make it more attractive. Those kinds of things are really sensible. But I think the problem is some of their other changes kind of push in the other direction and risk making things worse.
But some of these measures already started under the previous government, didn't they? I remember when I think Brandon Lewis was the Justice Secretary, he quite dramatically increased the fees for criminal lawyers. So, I mean, has that had any effect at all?
It absolutely has had an effect, and you can see if you look at kind of the number of criminal barristers and the total amount of spending on legal aid, that kind of public funding for criminal cases, those track pretty closely. So it is having an effect, but it takes some time. And obviously, if you've got very inexperienced lawyers, potentially that means things like cases take longer, trials might be less likely to go ahead on the day they're originally scheduled because people are still kind of finding their feet and don't have that depth of experience and expertise.
Could there not be a reform to the Crown Court system where some of the cases that are heard in Crown Courts actually needn't be, and they could be heard by magistrates' courts? And a lot of time, I think, is wasted in magistrates' courts. I mean, I was in a magistrates' court last week for a speeding offence, and half of the cases in that court on that day, and I've looked at other courts and it was exactly the same, were speeding cases, and they were cases where people had pleaded guilty and all they had to do was pass the sentence. Well, that doesn't have to be done in a courtroom, does it? They could easily free up a lot of spaces in magistrates' courts.
They could, and a lot of cases are already dealt with through what's called the single justice procedure, which is basically you don't have a court hearing, you have one magistrate who kind of looks at the papers and then makes a decision. But there have been some quite high-profile cases where that's gone quite wrong, where evidence in mitigation against or a kind of valid defence hasn't been heard. So there are risks you have to balance there. I think in terms of keeping more cases in magistrates' courts, absolutely, that makes a lot of sense and is, I think, the biggest part of the reduction in jury trials that the government is trying to make is by keeping more cases in magistrates' courts rather than sending them up to the Crown. What I'm not sure on is whether they're going to be able to scale up capacity in magistrates' courts either as quickly as they seem to be hoping.
Cassia, thank you very much indeed. That's Cassia Rowland there from the Institute for Government. Andrew Thomas KC joins me now, Vice Chair of the Criminal Bar Association, who's a barrister at Lincoln House Chambers. Andrew, good evening. I've spoken to various members of the Criminal Bar Association in the past, and everyone seems to be united against reducing the number of jury trials. With what David Lammy's announced today, do you see any hope that our courts could be less clogged up by the time of the next election?
Listen, Ian, I've listened very carefully to your introduction to this discussion, and I hate to tell you that today has got a lot of very good news. It is a whole package of measures that the government are going to bring forward. We've got strong opposition amongst criminal barristers to changes to trial by jury, but the penny is slowly dropping. That actually that trial by jury issue is a complete distraction. The things that are going to make a real difference, as Cassia has shown in various reports she's produced, are not getting rid of trial by jury, even for those cases that are described as lesser offences. Cassia has done a lot of work on the statistics, even taking the government's own figures at face value. When you work it through, their proposals for changing trial by jury would make a difference of maybe 1 or 2% in the speed at which cases find their way through the Crown Courts. So if you're a complainant in a rape case, or if you're a defendant, and your case has been listed for trial in a year's time, the difference that's going to make to the overall system is maybe it'll be brought forward by about a week. The things that matter are, as you said, lifting the cap on sitting days, allowing the courts to sit on more days, investing where it's needed in the infrastructure in the courts so that we don't lose time because video systems don't work, bringing in sensible measures to encourage people to plead guilty. A big difference could be made if there was just a small increase in the credit for people pleading guilty, and so there were increased incentives. Announced today is what's been described by the government as blitz courts. It's given different names around the country, and in places like Nottingham, Liverpool, Preston, Bristol, initiatives have been done to fast-track certain types of cases that are clogging up the system. And those cases are being resolved within a matter of 2 or 3 months instead of 2 or 3 years. There are small practical steps that can be taken, which when put together are going to make a real difference to the system.
Yes, but it's jam tomorrow, isn't it? Because from what David Lammy was saying, we're not going to see any real difference in terms of the clogging up of the system until after the election. Well, voters aren't going to... I mean, if you're within the criminal justice system, either as somebody who's accused of an offence or whether you are a lawyer or a judge, you kind of want to think that within the next 3.5 years, something may have got better.
But things can get better very quickly by taking pragmatic measures. I'll give you an example. In Liverpool, one initiative they've got is to bring together police, Crown Prosecution Service, defence solicitors, and defence barristers, and have a system where all cases are reviewed by one person, a senior Crown Prosecution lawyer, to knock heads together and to say, well, we don't need to prosecute this particular case to the full extent of the law. There is a pragmatic way of resolving this case. Let's get it before a judge next week, and we are quite sure that a sensible compromise can be reached to ensure that this case can be dealt with in a sensible way. Someone's charged with 10 burglaries doesn't have to be prosecuted 4 or 10. If they're willing to plead guilty to 4 or 5 of those cases, it's not going to make a fundamental difference. There are ways of resolving those cases. So there is plenty that can be done. There is a lot in the package that's allowed us today. But where we're going to agree to disagree with the government is over jury trials, because those proposals, what's described as more minor offences, they're not minor. This is a proposal that could affect cases where someone could go to prison for 3 years or more. That's not a minor matter. That's absolutely life-changing. It's not about simple cases like theft of of an iPhone, there are ways of getting those cases back in the magistrate's court. It's the intermediate cases where trial by jury really, really matters, where a judgment by 12 people randomly selected is going to provide a quality of justice that you don't get from a judge sitting on their own, selected for the job, out of touch with much of what's going on in society. The quality is not the same, and the difference to the time spent in the court is marginal. So we need to roll up our sleeves. There are practical things that we can do, and quite frankly, the proposals for trial by jury are just a distraction. Take that energy, put it into the things that make a difference.
Andrew, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Andrew Thomas, Vice Chair of the Criminal Bar Association. We'll come to your calls next. I suppose what I'd really like to hear from you is your experience of the criminal justice system and how you think it could be improved. And that's what you've been through it, as I did last week in a magistrate's court. I might tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But if you are a criminal lawyer, if you maybe have worked for the CPS before, maybe if you've been a judge or you are a current judge, I'd love to hear your views as well. When you hear David Lammy's words, do you sort of do what I've done and throw my hands up and say, well, we need more than this? You can't have a situation where the proposals that you're bringing forward, which may improve things in 10 years' time, they're not going to improve things in the next 3 years. I mean, you need to give your head a serious scratch, don't you? 22 minutes past 7.
Weekdays from 7 a.m. This is taxation without representation. Straight to the point. You get giddy with these returns. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
He gets up in the morning, really, isn't it?
Listen on our free global player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
This is 40-year-old Kathy, mother of two and self-confessed teleaddict.
Oh, look at you. That's brilliant. Well done.
This is also Kathy, working as part of a team to keep things calm at her local prison.
Listen, speak to me.
And helping someone's son write his first letter home in 8 months.
Well done. You should be really proud.
An extraordinary job, done by someone like you. Search prison jobs now.
It's the last chance to get yourself a ticket for Wednesday's Lotto draw.
It could be you.
Lotto from the National Lottery. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Chase is the digital bank that boosts your savings to 4.5% AER value.
A boost?
Yeah, it includes a 2.25% AER boost for the first 12 months. All the time. Bedtime, gym time, romantic dinner time. And soon you could boost your way to...
Beach time.
Boost your savings with Chase. Search Chase Boosted Saver. 18 plus UK residents available to new Chase current account customers for their first 31 days. 4.41% gross interest paid monthly. Eligibility and T's and C's apply.
A Southern train is a place where you can just switch off. Where you have the chance to scroll your feeds as you roll past fields. Or simply relax with a podcast, playlist or power nap. Go with your flow and save with advance tickets at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
Ian Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
24 minutes past 7. Albert says, by saying there's nothing they can do, it's admitting they're unfit for purpose. And if that's correct, they shouldn't be in government. Well, I tend to agree with that view because the whole point of being in government is to change. And if you have no real ideas for change, then get out of the job and let someone else have a go. I completely accept that the last Conservative government traduced our justice system by denying it of the resources that it needs. Now, things were changing towards the end, but that's all very well. They made so many bad decisions, which has led us to the situation that we're in today. And I don't think David Lammy has come up with radical plans to change the system before the next election. And in the end, voters, well, they vote for two things at an election. They look at your record and think, well, have you made our lives better? And then they look at what you're going to do in the next 5 years and think, are you going to make our lives better? And I would suggest that these reforms do not signal that things are going to improve before the next election. But what's been your experience of the justice system? Charlie is in Bristol. Hi, Charlie.
Hi there, Ian. I would just say that I think the whole system is completely antiquated and it seems to be like an old boys and old girls club. You know, when you look at Crown Courts, not opening sort of, by the time the hearings start at 10 o'clock in the morning, an hour for lunch and finishing at 3:30, it's not at all practical. And I think when I compare that to, maybe the US, where you have night courts, it just does not seem to be practical in this country.
Yeah, and that could have been addressed quite a long time ago, but of course it does mean extra money, because if you open courts for longer hours, that's going to cost. You're going to have more lawyers, defence lawyers, prosecution lawyers, court officials, etc., etc. But these things are not insolvable. If the Treasury will actually provide the money. And in terms of extra public spending, I mean, percentage-wise, it would be a fraction of a percent extra, but I suppose it all adds up, doesn't it?
And I completely agree, but when I look at the statistics of politicians that come from legal services, what is the motivation for change? And I listened to the legal professionals calling you tonight. That would be like turkeys voting for Christmas. Nobody wants it to change. I firmly believe, because there is no real motivation to want to see that more efficient, which I know may sound like a socialist view, but that's my own experience.
I don't think it is a socialist view. I think it's a practical view, because I think you're right that the legal profession is one of the most conservative, with the small c, professions in the country. They've always been resistant to change. They always say, well, we've always done it this way, so that must be the best way to do it, which I think is always the weakest argument. It means that a sector is ripe for reform, but you've got to have politicians with the courage and the willingness to make radical suggestions. And I'm afraid we have a Justice Secretary who was demoted from being Foreign Secretary. Yes, he was given the title of Deputy Prime Minister, and he spends half his time jetting around. He was in Sri Lanka the other day. Why? I mean, why would the Justice Secretary have to go to Sri Lanka?
I absolutely agree. I think, you become a legal professional maybe to be focused upon, what you've entered, and, to really make change and join for the right reasons. And I see, from my own experience, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Steve says, Ian, it's all very well speeding the courts up, but where are the extra prison spaces going to come from? Well, I mean, that's a non sequitur in many ways, isn't it? Because the way to make the prisons more efficient is to actually have fewer people in them. And there are so many offences where people are sentenced to prison, particularly for shorter sentences, and this is where I do agree with the government, where they have outlined plans to abolish shorter sentences, which I don't actually think do any good. You cannot be rehabilitated within 6 months. There are other ways to punish people. So I don't think you necessarily need extra prison spaces if you have a prisons policy, which is worth the description. Let's take this one from, who is it from? It's from Gordon in Hampstead. Oh no, this is a question he wants me to put to Simon Marks when we speak to him about the State of the Union address in a moment. Niall says, why the hell don't we decriminalise drug use? How much space in prisons and courts would we free up by legalising cannabis? Well, and Niall says he's a non-user. Take your word for that, Niall. Yeah, up to a point, Lord Copper, on that one, because you could use that argument for all sorts of different offences. I mean, we could decriminalise murder. And I exaggerate this to make the case, but you could decriminalise murder, and that would save 350-odd prison spaces every year. There are all sorts of things that you could decriminalise. When I agree with you that we should be looking at our drug laws, because they are not fit for purpose, they're out of date. But it's too simplistic to just say, well, if we decriminalise it, that'll make things a lot easier. The problem is that no government, and I include all Conservative and Labour governments over the past 50 years, no government has really looked at either the police or the court system to radically reform them. And I think that is negligent. I think they should have done. We never hear any radical proposals. I mean, this idea of abolishing jury trials for many offences, I suppose you could say that was radical, but in the wrong way. We should be learning from the experience of other countries, not necessarily ones that have a similar justice system to us. You see, the Sarah Sackman, the courts minister, she blew the gaff on the jury trials issue when she admitted a few weeks ago, she admitted that they would be doing this even if the courts weren't clogged up. I wish they'd just been honest about it right from the start. We'll come to more of your calls in a minute. What is your experience of the criminal justice system? And we'll be crossing live to Washington to speak to Simon Marks about Donald Trump's first State of the Union address of his second term. It's 7:30 on LBC. Amelia Cox has the news headlines.
Lawyers for Peter Mandelson say he was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office last night over baseless fears he was a flight risk. They claim the former US ambassador had agreed to a voluntary interview next month, and his overriding priority is to support police and clear his name. President Putin says Ukraine is sabotaging peace plans on the 4th anniversary of the conflict, though Sir Keir Starmer says Moscow is to blame. The EU, meanwhile, has confirmed a loan of 90 billion euros to Kyiv is being held up by Hungary. And Russell Brand is due to go on trial in June after pleading not guilty to 2 further sex offences, including a 3rd allegation of rape. The former comedian is facing several allegations made by 6 women, all of which he denies. LBC weather: clear spells in central, southern and eastern England, cloudier elsewhere with outbreaks of rain for western Scotland and Northern Ireland, a low of 6 degrees.
This is LBC.
All right, resistance up. Let's climb.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, my knee's playing up again.
Have you ever had it looked at?
No, but I've been doing a few stretches.
When my shoulder went, Benenden Health got me expert help. Showed me exactly where I was going wrong. Press play on your health with physiotherapy and much more. All for less than £16 per person per month. Search Benenden Health. Fee review periodically. T's and C's apply. Qualifying periods apply for some services, including physio. UK only. Visit benenden.co.uk.
You want £1 million?
I'd love £1 million.
So you enter the birthday draw and you think of a way to spend £1 million.
I'd pay off my mortgage and my mum's mortgage.
It's your lucky day and you win the birthday draw. But you forget to pay off those mortgages.
Whoops.
Because you're on a cruise with lots of money.
On a cruise, baby!
Is it your lucky day? For your chance to win £1 million, just search the birthday draw and enter now. From Global and ITV. 18 plus UK only. No purchase necessary.
At TfL, we're helping make roads safer. We're continuing to roll out lower speed limits because 20 miles per hour roads have already seen 24% fewer collisions causing death or serious injury. We're also improving junctions to help keep you safe and improving visibility for bus drivers with new wing mirror cameras. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Comparison of collisions data before and after implementation of 20 miles per hour speed limit.
Idle pocket money sits in a piggy bank, rolling its eyes and twiddling its thumbs. Bored stiff. But if you open a free Monzo Kids account, your child's pocket money is always busy. It earns interest in a savings pot and teaches them how to save for a future where they don't need to ask you for cash. Monzo, the bank that gets your money moving. For children aged 6 to 15, parent or guardian account needed first. UK residents only. T's and C's apply.
Ian Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
So we're asking about your experience of the justice system. What would you like to change in it? Do you have any confidence that the government are actually on the right track with some of the reforms that they are bringing in? So we'll come back to that in just a moment. But first I want to talk a little preview the State of the Union address that Donald Trump is about to deliver, I think, about 2 a.m. UK time. Henry Riley will be. He's going to go through all the way from 10 p.m. until 4 a.m. What a hero. And, of course, Simon Marks will be having his BDI across it. In fact, someone else called Simon has just texted in, can you ask Mr. Trump to wait a few minutes? Haven't got my popcorn yet. Well, you've got till 2 a.m. to procure your popcorn, Simon. How big's your tub, Simon?
Plenty of time to get more popcorn in, I can assure the other Simon, and he may need quite a lot of it, because who knows how long a speech we are going to get from President Donald Trump. Ian, he's got an awful lot to do in this speech, and he walks into the chamber of the House of Representatives tonight with devastating polling numbers having been published here earlier today. 2 polls, one for CNN, one for the Washington Post. The CNN poll says that 63% of the country disapproves of his first year in office. Just 36% approval. rating in that poll. The Washington Post has slightly better numbers, 39% approval, 60% disapproval. But what I think will really spook, if not the White House, certainly Republicans writ large, are numbers that show among voters who consider themselves independents, classic swing voters. Sometimes they vote Republican, sometimes they vote Democratic. They always end up determining the outcome of elections here. Among independent voters, CNN is recording that 73% of them say they disapprove of President Trump's time back in power. Only 26% of independents say they are backing him, and he's underwater on every single major issue. But if you look at the numbers on immigration, 58% disapprove of his handling of his mass deportation policies, and tariffs, 64% disapprove of his handling of that. And of course, we're going to have high drama on the floor of the House of Representatives tonight, because Donald Trump is going to come face to face with the 9 justices of the Supreme Court, who only on Friday voted 6-3 to eviscerate the tariff policies that lie at the heart not just of his trade policy, but at the heart of his foreign and national security policies as well. He will not, however, be coming face to face with scores of Democrats, at least 50 Democrats, possibly more, by the time the speech gets underway, have announced that they are boycotting the State of the Union tonight. That's an unprecedented decision by members of any political party on a night that is traditionally reserved for pomp and pageantry here in Washington, D.C. Instead, the Democrats are counter-programming. They're holding an event in Washington called the State of the Swamp, at which guest speakers, including the actor Robert De Niro, the actor Mark Ruffalo, and others, will be voicing their opposition to everything that Donald Trump has done since he returned to power in Washington in January of last year. So this is going to be a State of the Union address with a whole raft of differences from tradition, and with a whole pile of twists. We have just heard within the last couple of hours that the gold medal winning US hockey team, the ice hockey team, will be present in the chamber at the invitation of President Donald Trump for this State of the Union address. And according to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, that is intended to convey to the American public that we're all on the same team. But there will be many other indications in the chamber itself, including those empty Democratic chairs that indicate that this country is as deeply divided as ever as Donald Trump opens the envelope, pulls the speech out and begins to make it.
I must admit, when I was going home on the train last night, this Instagram reel came up of Donald Trump's phone call to Nish Patel, the FBI director, who was in the locker room with all of those hockey players. And it was actually, you know, I'm not Donald Trump's biggest fan, but this was about a 5-minute monologue that he was doing through Nish Patel's iPhone, and it was actually quite uplifting, and the hockey players really seemed to appreciate it. So I think that is going to be quite a scene. Just on that subject, I've got a question for you, Simon, from Gordon in Hampstead, who says, if you're speaking to Simon Marks today, can you ask him who his predictions are for any slutniks that President Trump may invite to his State of the Union address? I seem to remember he has a good track record for predicting these. This is nicknamed after Lenny Slutnik, the hero of the January 1982 Potomac air disaster, and whom Reagan later invited to his address. So, apart from the hockey players, who can we expect?
Well, I can tell you that Charlie Kirk's widow is definitely going to be present at the invitation of President Donald Trump. I'm also told, and we know ahead of time, I mean, Gordon's very nice for saying that I managed to predict all of these things. In fact, we do get told ahead of time pretty much who's going to be there, although we don't necessarily get the exhaustive guest list. But apparently there is going to be the family of who are victims of crime at the hands of an illegal immigrant in the United States. They will be present in the chamber at the invitation of President Trump. On the other side of the aisle, Democrats, even though many of them themselves are not putting themselves through listening to President Trump's speech, they've invited guests